everybody. My name is Debbie, and I'd like to welcome you to the Unitarian Universal Church of Tullahoma. I'd like to welcome everyone who's here today and everyone who's on Zoom. And if you are joining us on YouTube, a special welcome. Come into the circle of love and justice. Come into the community of mercy, holiness, and health. Come, and you shall know peace and joy. Carrie, would you light the chalice for us, please? We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign our quest for truth and meaning, and celebration of the life we share together. Announcements. We have PFLAG meets the second Monday of each month at 6 p.m. Let's see. Next week, our speaker will be Stan Baumgardner, and his topic is to be determined. The Wednesday night Zen group is Chuck is kind of helping out. There's a couple of people. Doug and Jancy are dealing with some parental, health issues. So we were kind of on a hiatus. So it's kind of hit or miss whether or not we're going to have Zen. So, but if you have any questions, Chuck Morgret would probably be the one who would know. Any other announcements? Jim.
Yeah, I have a couple announcements. We do have a board meeting today following service. And also, we are looking for folks to help out, serve on the religious education committee. Right now, that's a vacancy we have on the board, and we would like to form a committee and have folks kind of have a plan set up so when a family comes with kids, we have something in place for that. So, thank you, and that's it.
Any other announcements from Zoom? Any other announcements?
I don't know that people are interested in this, but my mother's service was live streamed. So if you want to watch it, and it was really, I think it was worthwhile, you can go to Trinity Lutheran Church UU website, and it's titled Services for Bell, B-E-L-L, although her name had an E on the end of it. So, if anybody, and if you want to contact me and get it from me, I can text it to you or email it to you, the link.
Any other announcements? Okay, well, I'm going to go to the reading of the day, and since Tom had given his talk on poetry, I had been, dabbling and reading a little bit of poetry, and then of course Tony, just had something that was really light, so I thought I would read a light poem. This is from Billy Collins, and I believe he was Poet Laureate of the United States. Twice, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's entitled, To My Favorite 17-Year-Old High School Girl. Do you realize that if you had started building the Parthenon on the day you were born, you would be done in only one more year? Of course, you couldn't have done it alone, so never mind. You're fine just the way you are. You're loved for just being yourself. But did you know that at your age, Judy Garland was pulling in $150,000 a picture? Joan of Arc was leading the French army to victory, and Blaise Pascal had cleaned up his room. No, wait, he invented the calculator. Of course, there will be time for all that later in your life, after you come out of your room and begin to blossom, or at least pick up your socks. And for some reason, I keep remembering that Lady Jane Grey was Queen of England when she was only 15. But then she was beheaded, so never mind her as a role model. Franz Schubert was doing the dishes for his family, but that did not keep him from composing 2 symphonies, 4 operas, and 2 complete masses as a youngster of romantic lyricism, not here in the suburbs of Cleveland. Frankly, who cares if Annie Oakley was a crack shot at 15 or if Maria Callas debuted in Tosca at 17? We think you are special, just being you, playing with your food and staring into space. By the way, I lied about Schubert doing the dishes, but that doesn't mean he never helped around the house. And so now I would like to introduce Cass. She is going to talk about Edward Cayce.
All right. Thank you very much. Before I begin my talk, I would like to share screen and show you a picture of what Edgar Cayce looked like. There are actually two pictures here. Go ahead, Jim, and right there. Thank you. The two pictures are of him as a young man and him close to the time of his death in his late 50s. And that's maybe give you an idea of who I'm talking about today and give you a little bit of a frame of reference. So that's all. Thank you. Okay. All right. I'm going to begin my talk with a few things here, and I'm going to try to read it off the screen. Edgar Cayce, the Sleeping Prophet. To begin my talk with today, this is an old saying that you may have heard way back when. There is so much good in the worst of us, and so much bad in the best of us, it doesn't behoove any of us to speak evil of the rest of us. That's a quote from Edgar Cayce. I have an improbable tale to tell today, but it just might give you some food for thought. I marvel at the feats that Edgar Cayce performed in his lifetime. Although I still have many questions about Edgar Cayce myself, I was very happy to chat about this man when I got the request from a UU member to speak about who Edgar Cayce was. I also happen to believe that Mr. Cayce gave a very hopeful message to future generations about the meaning of life. Trying to summarize this talk, though, was a little bit daunting due to the sheer volume of information that Cayce himself reported and what others have written about his life since he died. Literally, and I'm not exaggerating, thousands of books have been penned in many languages, and they describe any number of obscure topics that Edgar, when in trance, discussed. Cayce's story is complicated, questionable, inspiring, magical, and is daunting to the historic paradigm that I grew up with. In a nutshell, although as a young adult, Edgar began a career as a good photographer, the core of his life's work actually became that of being an intuitive healer and a Christian mystic. Edgar Cayce was an ordinary man who showed unusual abilities as a child. He was born in a rural state and just 12 years after the Civil War. He was heavily influenced by a fundamentalist Christian upbringing, and that always showed in his readings. As there was no high school where he lived, Edgar only attended school through the 8th grade. But he later exhibited almost limitless knowledge, like, for instance, speaking dozens of different languages with foreigners when he was in trance. When he died in Virginia Beach, January 3rd, 1945, part of the legacy that Edgar left was a college campus and an association called it's called the Association for Research and Enlightenment. Has the nickname of ARE, that's what everybody calls it. And today, that houses the largest metaphysical library in the world. Thousands of members, as well as anyone else who's just interested, can use ARE's resources. At the Nonprofit Research Center in Virginia Beach, one can attend workshops on a variety of topics like past life regression and dream interpretation. One can visit ARE to hear lectures from world-renowned speakers. They can receive alternative healing treatments or even travel abroad to sacred sites with scientific and spiritual guides. Edgar Cayce's original readings, though, are still under lock and key due to the many sensitive readings with many famous people that he read for, like Woodrow Wilson, Nikola Tesla, and Franklin Roosevelt. Here's a brief explanation I'll just read for you real quickly that is provided by ARE Online, and this will give you a little bit of a summary. Edgar Cayce has been called the sleeping prophet and the father of holistic medicine, and he was the most documented psychic of the 20th century. For more than 40 years of his adult life, Cayce gave psychic readings, is what he called them, to thousands of seekers while in an unconscious state, diagnosing illnesses, revealing lives lived in the past, and prophecies yet to come. But who exactly was Edgar Cayce? Well, Cayce was born on a farm in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, March 18, 1877. And his psychic abilities began to appear in early childhood, like age 3. He was able to see and talk with his late grandfather's spirit, and he often played with imaginary friends whom he said were spirits on the other side. He also displayed an uncanny ability to memorize the pages of a book simply by sleeping on it. These gifts labeled the young Cayce as kind of strange, but all Edgar wanted was to help others, especially children. Later in life, Cayce would find that he had the ability to put himself into a sleep-like state by lying down on a couch, closing his eyes, and folding his hands over his stomach. In this state of relaxation and meditation, he was able to place his mind in contact with all time and space. In other words, to tap into universal consciousness. From there, Edgar could respond to questions that were as broad as, what are the secrets of the universe? And what is my purpose in life? To specific questions like, what can I do to help my arthritis? And how were the pyramids in Egypt built? His responses to these questions came to be called the readings, and their insights offer practical help and advice to individuals. And I say that in present tense because those same readings are very helpful today, and many people use them. Perhaps the readings, many people are surprised to learn that Edgar Cayce vowed to read, he was a devoted churchgoer and Sunday school teacher. And at a young age, Cayce vowed to read the Bible for every year of his life. And at the time of his death in 1945, he had accomplished this task. Perhaps the reading said it best when Edgar, at age 12, asked his guides how to help others. And young Cayce's advice was to become, quote, more spiritual. That's the biography on the ARE online, and if you're interested in the organization, you can check it out there. But moving on, the Cayce story does get pretty lively. Like this. Ignorant farmer talks like a doctor when asleep. That was a 1930s newspaper title in Edgar Cayce's early adulthood. In his lifetime, Edgar was both praised and vilified by skeptics who questioned his words and controversial abilities. And that criticism persists even today. A current Wikipedia entry says that Cayce, quote, claimed to be a psychic, and that he, quote, advocated pseudo-historical ideas. Edgar Cayce himself, not his guides this time, actually said this: actually, we have no problems. We have opportunities for which we should give thanks. Any error we refuse to correct has many lives. It takes courage to face one's own shortcomings and wisdom to do something about them. For 20 years, Cayce's readings were devoted to the physical needs of other people, and he gave very accurate medical diagnoses, and he literally saved quite a few people's lives. His later readings, though, took a dramatic turn. In the 1920s, Cayce's trance readings expanded beyond medicine to include life readings. And there he explored a person's inner conflicts and needs. And in these sessions, Cayce employed references to astrology, karma, reincarnation, and numbering symbolism like sacred geometry. Other times, he expounded on global prophecies, climate, geologic changes, and the lost history of Atlantis and Lemuria. But Edgar had no recollection of any of this when he was awake. As a devout Christian in his early adult years, the esotericism of such material made him wince when he would read the transcripts from his secretary. He announced finally that he was just going to quit doing the readings if, one, he ever hurt anyone with giving information, and two, if any material ever contradicted his opinion that God is love. The readings never faltered, and Cayce's opinion of God ultimately expanded to include Buddhist, Hindu, and other enlightened understandings worldwide. Edgar's mature worldview did a lot more also. As one reviewer has put it, it actually assembled a catalog for the dawning new age to explore the nature of consciousness to improve the world. The spiritual ideas running through his readings, combined with his own intrepid study of Scripture, supplied the basis for a universal approach to living. One recent review of Cayce's philosophy says that today, the 21st century writer Eckhart Tolle, who is a best-selling author and wrote The Power of Now and A New Earth, that both stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for a long time, has a very similar view to Cayce's philosophy. Both are familiar, though, with the accumulated spiritual wisdom of the ages. 21st century Eckhart Tolle, however, explains things from our contemporary perspective, and here's what I mean. An Edgar Cayce cosmology said this: God is essentially love, and the universe is completely orderly. Each person was created as a soul to become a companion with the Creator. And Cayce's guides said more than once, there is no force in the universe more powerful than your will or power. 21st century Eckhart Tolle will put it a little bit differently these days. Here's what Tolle says about the same thing. Tolle says, you are not in the universe. You are the universe, an intrinsic part of it. Ultimately, you are not even a person, but a focal point where the universe is becoming conscious of itself. And Tully adds, what an amazing miracle. The readings did include very obscure topics like the Akashic records and angels and past lives. And there are many controversial topics that his guides discussed through him. But I'll give you just a smattering of 3 of the ideas that came through Cayce readings. Number 1, Cayce's guides said humankind goes back 10 million years. And here's a direct quote from one reading. The Nile entered into the Atlantic Ocean. What is now the Sahara was an inhabited land and very fertile. What is now the central portion of this country, or the Mississippi Basin, was then all in the ocean. Only the plateau was existent, or the regions that are now portions of Nevada, Utah, and Arizona formed the greater part of what we know today as the United States. Number 2, a second unusual topic that Cayce was very interested in was about the daily life of a young Jesus, 11 years before the Dead Sea and Nag Hammadi scrolls were found. When they were found, they validated everything Cayce said. Cayce's guide said young Jesus was trained by an eccentric sect called the Essenes. And as a young adult, he traveled extensively for years with his cousin John. And cousin John was his bosom buddy. He went to even India, Egypt, and Tibet to learn from master teachers. When Yeshua began his 3-year mission, and I'll stop a moment here, that's the correct pronunciation of Jesus' name, and that's according to Professor Dr. Elaine Pagels of Princeton University, who has researched those scrolls I talked to you about. Yeshua was helped in his teachings by some of his siblings. He had quite a few. James, Jude, and Ruth, and his bosom buddy, cousin John, helped him out. And the third item, in over 1,200 of his 14,000 readings that are recorded, over 1,200 of them, Edgar Cayce in trance described that Atlantis did exist in the past as a highly advanced civilization for thousands of years. The last Atlanteans were survivors of a flood about 12,000 years ago that destroyed their continent when the Atlantic Ocean's sea levels jumped 300 feet above their usual level. I'll pause here just a minute to tell you that geologists today now speculate and have evidence to support the idea that a huge meteor slammed into the earth and literally changed the globe overnight. But at any rate, spiritually minded Atlantean refugees spread quickly around the world, and a large contingent of them settled in then fertile Egypt. The Atlanteans buried what they called a hall of records, which was a library that detailed their achievements, left directions, and it's all under the Giza Plateau. Cayce recorded, and remind you, this is 50 years ago that he reported this. He reported that in about 100 years, people would become mature enough to handle the information wisely, and barriers to finding the library would be removed, and we would have access to that. In readings on Egypt, Cayce revealed the origin, the purpose, and the prophecies of the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx. Told you just how they were built. Ancient Egyptian rulers, and by the way, that included many Atlantean pharaohs, were in Egypt, and they were there as early as 36,000 years ago working. The guides also mentioned that Edgar had lived a past life in Egypt as a priest called Ra-Ta, who wanted to unify the spiritual teachings of the people. If you're interested in reading more about Edgar Cayce's life, after hearing a little bit of this stuff, I recommend a biography, and it's called An American Prophet, and it was written by Sidney D. Kirkpatrick, who is an award-winning author and filmmaker. Kirkpatrick came to the subject of Edgar Cayce as a non-believer, and he had to be cajoled into looking into the topic by his new wife, Nancy. She liked Cayce. Due to his literary reputation and all his awards, Sidney was the first member of the general public ever allowed to survey sensitive information, but under lock and key. After a day and a half locked in the vault at ARE, he emerged to find excited librarians waiting to see if Sidney's opinion of Edgar Cayce had improved. Kirkpatrick was speechless. When he finally recovered, Kirkpatrick marveled at the vast amount of material, huge, 14,000 readings, and well cataloged. And he was impressed by that. He also was very impressed with the large number of worldwide known people, including leaders, who Edgar Cayce had read for multiple times during their famous years. At any rate, before he would begin the biography of Cayce, Kirkpatrick and his wife bought a camper, and they started a 6-year hiatus across America because he wanted to find if these readings were accurate, to find additional validation, and to learn more about Edgar's life. Later, a second book was written called Tall Tales, and that was written by Sidney and Nancy Kirkpatrick. And it included stories from people who had personally known Edgar Cayce, as well as new information from the vault that had never been seen before. There are many true stories of Cayce's amazing feats. And before I close, I'll just share one report that is well known and was reported on. Edgar Cayce did many of his readings by way of letters that were written to him. By the way, by the time he had moved from the South to Virginia Beach, which the guides recommended exactly where he moved and all that, when he moved there, he was receiving so much mail, he made an arrangement with the post office, and they would deliver stacks of mail in bags. It averaged anywhere from 200 to 500 letters a day that he was getting. But at any rate, back to the story here. So he did many of his readings by way of just writing letters back to people who asked questions about health conditions or other concerns. And one such letter that he read, and by the way, the guides often pointed out the letters because Cayce was so overwhelmed by so many. They would point out which letters for him to read. But at any rate, one such letter asked for help with a very sore leg. And Cayce's guides recommended using an obscure herbal remedy, and it was called oil of smoke. When the letter writer tried to find such a product, Nobody had ever heard of it. In fact, a skeptical pharmacist in Pennsylvania, and that's where the client lived, offhandedly scoffed that the client should write Cayce again. Just being a smartass. Well, the sore-legged patient did just that. The guides replied again, and they said that the pharmacist could find a bottle of the oil of smoke in the pharmacist's old, excuse me, I've got to switch pages here and I'm having trouble. Just a second, I need to go down one more. I can't get it. Middle of the story, no less. Okay. I need one more page. Yeah, thank you. Okay, all right. So, when the second letter was received, and it mentioned that the bottle was in an old storage area. It was on the top shelf on the right, behind all the other bottles. And when the pharmacist and the assistants went there, they found it exactly as was described by the guides. The only difference was the bottle was a little bit dusty. The amazed pharmacist said that his pharmacist father must have bought it, and after he had bought the business from his dad, the pharmacist had never known it existed. The stunned pharmacist sold it to the customer, and in a few days, the patient was completely healed. That's the kind of stuff Cayce did. I'm going to end my talk today with 3 quotes that come from that universal consciousness source that spoke through Edgar Cayce. And I'm going to read them slowly because I want you to kind of contemplate each short thing as I read that. Number 1, the guide said, "Remember that all is one. What you do to your neighbor, your friend, or your foe is a reflection of what you think of your Creator." Number 2, he who understands nature walks with God. And the third thought, make the world a better place because you have lived in it. So, I thank you for your time and your interest, and I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about Edgar Cayce. The end.
Thank you, Cass. I really did not know anything about Edgar Cayce, so I was really interested to hear all about that, and we'll have to do a little more research myself. Anyway, thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. I learned something, and that's what I love about this church is I come and I learn something. We're gonna do our closing hymn, so if everybody would like to stand as you are able.
As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.
Okay, so how about we meet here about 10 after?